This is the Mediate Now with Winter Wheeler. Your clear choice for expert mediation and negotiation advice. But it's so much more than that. Take our advice, you will improve your entire life. Are you ready? Let's get to it. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I am here today with my dear friend, Erica Cannon. Erica and I are graduates of both Georgetown undergrad and Tulane Law. And I think we graduated undergrad at the same time. And then you were 1 year behind me at law school?
I think you're 1 year ahead of me. And no, I was 1 year ahead of you
In
in
undergrad?
undergrad.
Okay,
And
well,
I was
I'm '03, so.
yeah, I'm 02. And then I was 07.
And I was '06.
Yeah. So you came out before me.
Wow. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
despite my faulty memory, Erica and I are good friends. We go way back. If there's one person who truly gets my background without me talking about it, it is Erica, because we have been through a lot of the same things. Erica, thank you for joining today.
I'm happy to be here.
I am super excited. So, Erica, like I said, is a lawyer, but she left the practice of law. And Erica, I want you to talk a little bit about your initial practice when you came out. What did you do?
Of course. I finished in '07. And I went immediately to Shreveport, Louisiana, where I clerked for the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, Judge Carl Stewart. And then immediately I went to DC and worked in international arbitration for White and Case. And then I moved over to Buckley Sandler, where I did some litigation and some government compliance work. Good times with all of the above.
Until not. It's really interesting to me because so many lawyers say that they want to leave litigation or the practice of law in general, I guess.
Yeah.
I typically deal with litigators, so that's why I refer to litigators. But so many people say that they want to leave and then they never do.
Yeah.
You did. So how did you escape or get out?
When I first started practicing, I was really dealing a lot with some latent anxiety and depression that had always kind of been riding under the radar. And while in law school, I loved law school, loved it, was obsessed with
Okay.
everything.
I mean, we were in New Orleans. Is that what you mean? Like,
And when you say law school, you mean what happened around law school? No, actual law school. I just don't know what it was about it. It was very solitary. I really appreciated that.
solitary, girl, I wouldn't describe it that way.
Well, I felt it was that way, but you're an extrovert. My introvert self, I studied business at Georgetown. And so it was group project after group project, presentation after presentation. And then you get to law school. It's just you, your books, and your 3 hour final. That's it, right? You can have a group that you study with, but at the end of the day, it's you. What you're going to do. You know,
Right.
are you going to know your stuff or are you not going to know your stuff? And I really enjoyed that. And I just thought it was such a game. I really enjoyed sort of playing with it. And I became known everywhere I worked, even for my summers, as the girl who would know random case law. Just random case law. Like, you ask Erica. We got
Okay.
this contract issue. And I'm like, you know what? I feel like I read, a case out of, 1912. Let me go look that up. I'll figure it out. And we'll just go ahead and, I don't even remember the language anymore, but, update it. Like, see what had cited up until this time. And we're going to get that case law we need. And so I really love being,
Jeopardize?
yes,
Yes, that's the word.
yes, let me shepherdize that and get you this case law. And I just loved it. I thought it was such a creative, fun thing. And so that was kind of my approach to the law. And so even while I sort of had my thing and I really enjoyed it, at the end of the day, I was taking it way too seriously. Like just every single thing would get me down. Miss comma in an email, not a brief. It's not going anywhere. It's
Right.
within the firm. And I would just beat myself up. And so I really found myself going up and down a lot. So sort of high anxiety and then really down in the dumps and sort of this like very depressive, low energy state. And I think that if any attorney that worked with me listened to this, they would say no way. Like absolutely not. Because on the outside, I was light, bright, happy. My lights were always off in my office. I always had soft music playing. People would come in, sit down, catch their breath, not say a word to me, and then just get up,
Wow.
leave, and go back to work.
You were a calming spot when you were not feeling calm.
Inside, I was not feeling calm at all. And so I think that, that was going on. At home, I was the exact opposite. I remember one morning ironing my clothes and crying, like just crying. And my now husband, then boyfriend, was like, "You don't have to do this." And I
Yeah.
was like, well, let's just move out. Let's just move out of this $1 million home. Let's just set up this refrigerator box in the corner and like, I'll live out of that. And so, very much in my mind. And I think this is, what you're talking about. A lot of what keeps us in a profession that may not be working for us is that we've built a life around it.
Right.
I remember a partner saying to me during one of my summers, I was kind of like hanging back and we're going through this sort of cafeteria style place. And all of the guys in front of me were talking about like, oh, what car are you going to get when you, start your first year? What are you going to get? What are you going to get? And so this partner is just kind of hanging back with me. And he's like, yeah, we love it when you guys talk like that. And I
Mm.
was like, oh, yeah. And he must have lost himself at that moment, forgot who I was. And he was like, yeah, because when you do that, you're never gonna leave. You guys who buy these cars,
You
go
got
in
to pay it off.
that you're not going anywhere. And, you know, for me, and I'm kind of hopping around here, I promise to tie it up. When I quit, I remember the partner I quit to saying, well, what are you going to do with your house, with your car, with your this, with your that? I was like, I don't own anything. I'm a free spirit. I am a soul that's ready to float. I can go do whatever I want at this point. So I think so. What happened for me is that I had all this anxiety going on, and I really took the time to address it, to address the anxiety, to address the depression. I started to meditate. I started to do yoga. I started to listen to CDs back then, listen to whatever I can get my hands on that was going to uplift me
Right.
and was going to sort of take me out of the state that I was in, which was kind of life is happening to me. I'm trapped. I'm a lawyer. What else could I possibly do? Right? I have to do this. Um, and what I was able to do was shift myself in the career I was in. I was able to overcome that anxiety, get through that depression, and find myself in a very even space as a lawyer, very clear, even as a relatively young lawyer, about what I was and what I was not going to do, about what my hours were going to be. And, these are big firms. And so I was a team player, but in terms of just being completely ridiculous, just there for the sake of being there, I stopped that. And so I think, as a lawyer, I was really able to rein my life in, overcome the anxiety, overcome the depression. And then I looked around and I said, okay, even with everything perfect, shining star, life, career could have gone wherever it wanted to go. I don't want to do this. I see where it's going. And I see that these people who are partners, I admire them so much. They're so freaking good at what they do. To work under them is a pleasure, and I still don't, this is not the best use of me. And
Ooh, I like that. Not
yeah,
the best use of me.
yeah. And I resigned, and I'll tell you that people said some terrible things, what a waste. Oh, I can't believe that you're going, as if it was a judgment of them and their life decisions. And it wasn't. It really
Yeah.
wasn't. Because I think if you're a lawyer, you're a lawyer. My husband is a lawyer. He's a freaking lawyer. all day, every day. And I'm not that. I'm not that. It's you can be good at things and not love it. And it's okay to acknowledge that and walk away. At least that's what I told myself 10 years ago.
That's amazing. Well, people always like to project.
Yes.
So if someone is secretly unhappy with
Yeah.
their own choices, when someone has the courage to make a new choice for themselves, like it's hard to see. It's like,
Yes.
wait a minute. So it can be done.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I remember when you stopped working. I remember that. And I
Mhm.
was just like in awe, like, wow, she left.
Yeah.
And then I heard that you went to St. Martin. And I was like, wait a minute. She's really living her best life. Tell us about that and your decision to move to St. Martin.
So I left. I moved immediately to Amsterdam, where I am now. And I probably spent a few months just watching television, like literally just like coming out of the shell of lawyerhood.
Right.
And then I got this really deep feeling that I needed to move. And so I went to India, trained as a yoga teacher for a few months, came back to Amsterdam, opened a yoga studio. And then 6 months later, my husband got a job offer in St. Martin. And so what we moved. Yeah, that's pretty much what happened there. And that was just a really wonderful experience. So I continued with the yoga, the meditation, and I started to train other people to be yoga teachers. And it's been my pleasure in this work, the yoga, the meditation. I'm also a life coach, is that I've attracted a ton of professionals, right? So a ton of people who really they kind of have a similar story. And it's not necessarily about them leaving their careers. It's about just being comfortable where they are, being joyful where they are, willing to have some courage to start to create a life, even within the life they've already created that they actually like.
I love
So,
that because, I loved being a lawyer. I loved it. I like being a mediator better. But I did actually love being a lawyer. I loved the exercise of it, the mental exercise. I loved just getting a new case and looking at it like it was a puzzle and figuring out just how I was going to win. And I mean, I was like high off of it.
I love that. I did too. I loved a new case file.
I mean, just amazing. It's like,
Yeah.
ooh, I could just start this myself. It's great. So, yeah, I get that. I loved it, but I was super stressed because I loved it so much. I took it so seriously that I wasn't functioning properly everywhere else in my life. As we talked about this before, you're now married and you have a daughter. I'm married and I have 4 kids, which I guess kind of developed over the past 10 years. But it became impossible for me to fully nurture my children and fully nurture my job and then my career, which I consider to be different from my job. I couldn't even focus on that part. It was more of like get through the day,
Yes.
and I didn't like that.
Yeah.
And, I didn't really know how to deal with that. But, I got to follow along on your journey and see how that went. And I actually have, I want to say, one other friend who left the practice of law entirely. She was just burnt out. She couldn't do it anymore. And she wasn't living her authentic life, like you said. And so she went on to do other things. But I love the idea of being able to make yourself happy in your situation. Because if you are a lawyer and you love being a lawyer, but you're stressed, you don't need a career change. You need to figure out how to cope with the stress that you have. So
Absolutely. I think that you'll agree with me on this, but it's my experience looking at the people that I've worked with, something about lawyers that they don't want to seek help. They don't want to acknowledge that there's an issue. And maybe it goes back, as I say this, to sort of the individuality of being a lawyer. Like it's really, you can be in a team, but like at the end of the day, there's this sort of by yourselfness to it. There's this sort of, this is my work product. And so to say that I am feeling bad or, just emotionally, I'm not measuring up right now. And I mean, we don't do it.
Right.
We
It's
cannot do
hard. We've got licenses to maintain. And so
it.
you
Absolutely.
don't want to do anything that might risk your license or that might risk clients wanting to depend on you. You need all of those things. And so it's hard.
Eventually, if we let it go too far, then you do have the issue of it sort of spinning out of control. And then the issue that you've been running from of risking your license is now front and center. And I'm sure you remember the story, and I don't remember names, but I remember a suicide of a lawyer from a relatively big firm that happened a few years back. And I remember being so moved by it. And I went and I read a ton of stuff. And one of the things I read was something that his wife wrote, non lawyer. And she said that she watched her husband under so much stress. And, it had been that way for as long as she could remember. And she said this time it did seem different.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, this man committed suicide because it was something like he said he didn't want to disappoint the people that he was working with, or he didn't want to, he made um, a mistake on a case. Something had gone wrong. And, I just remember the wife's words. She said, "It's not lost on me that everyone is disappointed anyway, that by him committing suicide, um, everything that he was trying to avoid is what came to fruition anyway." And so, in all of this trying to protect our self-image and what people think of us in this moment, we're risking the future, really. And so, what you and I are talking about right now is saying, right now, let me be honest with myself. This is a struggle. Listening to you talk about what you went through, you got to a point where you said, I don't have a bird's eye view of my life. I am just in it. I feel like it is out of control. I am just trying to get through the day. I don't know if I'm doing well at any of it. And you could have
Absolutely.
been doing very well at all of it, but you didn't feel like you had your arms around it. From that point, say, let me just stop for a minute and reassess and see what I can do on my own. Let me reach out to someone who can support me
Yeah.
because it's manageable. It is manageable. And I think that's one of the key points here. There's something that can be done about it. Even though it seems like, no, this is the way it has always been, it's the way it always will be. All the people before me look this way, and all the people who are coming after me, they look like they're going through the same thing. Like, this is life. It's not. I think that's something important for us to know. It is possible for things to be different. It's possible for you to have a joyful, full life and a prosperous, amazing, abundant career.
Right. And what I love that you made that comparison or that reference to not really having a bird's eye view of your own life. So, how do you help your clients figure that out? What do you do with them?
Mm. It's so individual, depending on people coming to me. But when I look back, and I've been doing this lately as I start to work with larger groups of people, the first thing that I do with absolutely everyone is help them get quiet. It's just to help them learn how to quiet that mind that is saying, you messed that up. You need to do this. You shouldn't have done that. So and so said this about me. I wonder what this person thinks. The mind is so crazy. So, a lot of the stress that we're dealing with is not even just the work that needs to be done and the hours that we're working and the family. It's a lot of other BS that's swimming around there, a lot of other drama and self abuse that
Yes, indeed.
cause the issues. And so one of the first things I try to help people do is to get really quiet and to learn how to maintain just a quiet mental space for, at first a short period of time, but it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows. And then from there, we're able to look at the situations that they're in that are sort of immediate, the immediate dramas and issues, and sort of figure out how it is that they want to show up and deal with those things. And so you can imagine at that point, you had a quiet mind, you've extinguished the fires. We start to talk about power. And
I love that word. I mean,
it's such a good word, right? It is not one that we use often enough because the thing is, most of us think that we are at the effect of our lives. Things are just happening. Everything is sort of, and it's like, no, 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 my love. Things are absolutely not just happening. And you have a lot of power to dictate what your life looks like, even in the subtlest of ways. Tiny shifts, and I'll give you an example. A client who she said, I feel like my day is just full of tiny pockets where I just can't get things done. But like, what am I going to do about that? Everything is so busy. And so I have a half hour here, and then there's a meeting, and then I've got a half hour there. And that's not how I like to work. I like to go deep. And I like to feel like when I'm able to go deep, always something clicks. And I feel like this is a good work product. But I can't go deep in this environment. What? As if it's just all happening to her. And I know that it can feel that way. But when we start to move from quiet, drama free into power, then all of a sudden you see things differently. It's like a veil is lifted from your head, and you're like, I decide. I decide. And so step by step, I really help people to step into the fact that you can create your life. And it sounds, especially, when we're talking in these really corporate environments, it sounds very fluffy. And I know this language is becoming a little bit more integrated into society, but it's true. You decide. And I think that the first part of working with me is getting people to that point where they're even open to considering that they get to make these massive shifts in their lives.
I can imagine that because, like I said, I've been there, and you're just kind of like, well, what exactly is it that I do? I don't feel like I can do anything. And I saw some quote, some meme or something, and it was just essentially think of a small decision that you could make today that would change your entire life. And it wasn't really encouraging anyone to do that, but just to kind of think about what you could do that could change your life, like things that were completely within your control. And I was like, what? First of all, there are these things. But for whatever reason that day, I really sat and I thought about it. And I was like, there are lots of things. And what would I like for my life to look like? And do you want to spend more time with your kids? Of course I do. So how do you figure out how to do that?
Absolutely. And I love that you let it in that moment. I remember working with an attorney who we were, at the office. It was probably post midnight because that was how we rolled. And I walked into her office and she was just head in hands. I sat down and I said, what's going on? And she just burst into tears. She said, my son, one is kissing my picture and the other one calls the nanny mommy. This is my life. And
Oh,
she was like, I don't know what to do. I love my career and I can't see a different way. And that was that. No one had planted the seed and it was not my place then. What's one tiny thing that you could do right now, today, that would change your entire life? So I just love that you took it and you thought about it.
yeah, and it's hard to even like give yourself credit for things like that when you do them. And it's like,
It's massive though.
it is. It is. I'm going to start using the word power because I don't use that very often. So
Hang out with me and you are going to literally be like raising the earth with your your gaze.
I love it. So thank you so much, Erica. I think that we have given people a lot to think about. I love your story. I love it. Anytime I can hear you tell it, it's amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so grateful.
Listen, thank you for having me. And I think anyone listening should take the question that you took. I'm a coach, so I always give homework.
Of
They
course.
should take that question. If there was one small thing that I could change today that would change my entire life, what would that be? I think everyone should think about that and allow themselves to maybe think about actually making that small change.
Thank you for listening to the Mediate Now. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Music and audio editing provided by Encompass Podcast Studio. Take our advice. You will improve your entire life.